Hi, guys, and welcome to Word of the Day Wednesdays. I am author Nicole D. Miller, and this is my debut novel, When Love Wins. When Love Wins is an urban Christian fiction story. It is depicting two young female cousins with a rift in their relationship. When Natalie, the faith based social justice advocate writer, loses her mother, she moves in with her cousin Ashley, the socialite, fashionista, a little bit snobby cousin. And instead of a warm welcome, she receives an icy cold one from Ashley. Is their issue dealing in childhood trauma? You bet. You can learn more at whenlovewins.love. All right, guys, so every week I piggyback off of my latest blog, and this week's blog is A Sacrificial Love. Now, I have never, ever, ever been married, and this is what I say in the blog. And I know historically the church has esteemed marriage to be that all encompassing tool that really, refines you and prunes you. And I am not even, saying that that's not the case, but because I've never been married and I can attest to being refined, to being pruned, to dying to self over and over, I will say that that's not the only tool that God will use to sanctify you. God has definitely used my singleness to sanctify me. So, in this blog, I talk about how I have learned sacrifice in my journey as a single person for 20 years of adulthood. But in this season, I see how being a parent is building on that. And you guys have probably heard me talk about my goddaughter is with me now and how I am a baby mama. I'm a baby mama, you guys. But it's kind of like a Mary situation, how it happened supernaturally. You know how Mary got pregnant without being with a man. The Holy Spirit overshadowed her. Didn't happen like that exactly, but definitely a supernatural experience to where all of a sudden I have a 16-year-old. That by itself is a miraculous situation because I felt behind in this area with so many of my peers. I'm in my early 40s. So many of my peers have been married not once but twice, maybe three times. They definitely have started their families for those of them who have kids and wanted that route or have been able to have that journey. And so, as the years roll by and the decades roll by, you definitely can feel behind. I'm not the only person I know. I have other, women in this situation with me. And so when I got my goddaughter, I heard the Lord say, "Look, Nicole, I caught you up." And it was wild because when I did the math, it was like the age difference between us, I would have had her in my mid 20s, which is societally normal. And it was a healing experience for me. It was an encouraging experience for me to realize that because it was like, oh, you care. God cares. And it was him redeeming the time. So I say all that to say, in becoming a parent, I am now tapping into another aspect. That's probably a better way of putting it. Another aspect of sacrificial love. And I know all the parents out there who, have been in it for a while, know way more than I do about this life. But I thank God for the examples that I had growing up of my mom and my grandma. And in the blog, I talk about their examples, and I have one particular experience that stands out to me. When I was young, I was staying at a friend's house who lived downstairs in my grandmother's apartment complex, and the babysitter got locked out. Somehow I got locked out too with the babysitter. And my friend had locked her out being a brat, and the babysitter was hungry, and I had told my aunt, my grandma, and my mom about it. And my grandma had cooked like all this amazing soul food, mac and cheese and black eyed peas and green beans and just the works. But my friend was not black. She was Caucasian, and that was not her life. She was not about the soul food life. But she was hungry, and so my mom and grandma ended up taking her to McDonald's. And I probably, gosh, because we lived over there and I think we moved out when I was 10. So I definitely wasn't over 10 years old. I was probably like 9. But it's so wild that that memory stands out to me as a picture of these women who have these amazing hearts to nurture and mother children who are not their own. And I have other stories. But I thank God for that example because now I'm pulling on those examples. And honestly, it's like I don't even have to try, it just oozes out of me in my demonstrating servant parenting. And I'm going to be cautious with that word and define it because I don't want people to get the wrong idea. But I know my mother demonstrated that. She was her heart was to be a servant leader, and there were so many ways that she demonstrated that. And it wasn't peaches and cream, but it definitely ministered enough to me to where now I have adopted that same mindset and way about me to where it is a heart to serve by example and to lead by example the next generation so that they're adopting these characteristics. And I'm not doing it perfectly, it's just something that I'm aware of that's happening. But the thing about the blog that I write about is having a teenager is like having a cat. And it's interesting because I somebody told me this a while ago, and maybe it was one of my best friends, but they definitely said like, yeah, having a teenager is like having a cat, and like having a puppy or a dog is like having a child, which is something I always knew, which is why I never wanted I wanted a puppy or a dog because it's so much work. And you're really starting from like that baby stage, especially with the puppies. Even with getting BJ as a kitten, he went through those stages so fast, you know. So long story short, I definitely think there's similarities because, you know, teenagers go through their changes, even the best teenager, which, you know, I was the best. No, just kidding, guys. I had my own issues as a teenager, but, you know, teenagers they're going through a lot of changes, you know, internally, mentally, emotionally. They're kind of at a delicate stage, and I don't know if we really use that word too much with them because they can be difficult. And I think of the movie Inside Out, Inside Out 2, because I'm like, yeah, that movie was definitely on point. You know, it's a delicate stage because they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out who they are, they're trying to figure out what they want to do in life. They're not secure. And this is the time for them to start becoming secure. I feel like my security came in college, and when you're in college, you're still a teenager, right? And so my security really came and catapulted through a spiritual experience, but I was like 19, so late teens. So as parents, it's like an honor in a sense to be a part of that process for them as they're becoming more secure in their identity. But not an easy process. I don't know anybody who has teenagers where they're like, oh yeah, this is cake, you know. But what I see is that it is developing another aspect or another type of sacrificial love. And if I hadn't gone through my journey of sacrifice and long suffering and sanctification, I wouldn't be prepared for this part at all. So I thank God for that. And even being a pet mom, even having a cat, you know, those times where I'm like, oh, I want to love on you. And then he just like walks away. It's just like, I always felt like BJ was like just that difficult family member. I think I had told one of my friends that recently or a while ago. It's like, you know, he's just kind of like that difficult family member that you just still have around and you still love, you know, because most of my friends are not cat people. Like, well, I shouldn't say most. I think half are cat people and half are dog people. But the ones who are dog people are just looking like, ooh. And I get it. Cats can be difficult. I get it. But I see that that was the tool that God was using for me to develop selflessness and selfless love. And now parenting is another tool. Because there's just a whole nother level of investments. That is the word, investment. And at times in this season, in the transitioning of it, it has felt all consuming. Now, thankfully, I'm not doing it alone. There's an amazing resource in Cleveland called New Era. Oh my God, shout out to them. Okay, you guys, check them out if you haven't already. But they're amazing. They just moved to Buckeye. And of course, I still have her mom and their family, and I have my spiritual family in our village. And it's beautiful to even just see how we're partnering together in this season. Like her mom and me and our roles in her young life. And it just blows my mind that God had this planned all along. Like, part of it is like, oh yeah, I knew this because I was telling people, like, yeah, I'm gonna take her when she's a teenager. Like, I knew. But to see it actually happen and it being in the midst of these other promises that are manifesting, I'm like, whoa, really? Really? This is happening? Okay. It just shows you that it's supernatural. Definitely nothing that we could have come up with at all, but it's working. It's working, and there's so much fruit from it, and this is just the beginning. So, if you guys are encouraged, I hope so. I hope you're encouraged. If you want to check out the blog, go to NicoleDMiller.com. I am in the process of finishing my newsletter, so be on the lookout for that. July was another beautiful month. Another beautiful month in so many ways. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes, you guys. A lot. And so I'm hoping to share in the next few months about those things. But one of the things I'll say is, we're in the process of publishing Dr. Shamara Hutchins, her book, A Horology of a Woman, and it's been phenomenal to partner with her in ghostwriting. And so she's dropping her book soon. She has her pre-sale up. Go to at Horology to find out more, and definitely check out her next event. All right, guys, that is all. Thank you for tuning in to Word of the Day Wednesdays.